It was a rainy evening, the kind where the world outside seems to weep in unison, when I returned home early from work. As I settled into the quiet of our living room, my wife's car, parked in the driveway, suddenly came to life with an unexpected Bluetooth connection. The soft murmur of a conversation, intimate, hushed, and unmistakably not mine, spilled through the speakers. In that breathless instant, every promise we'd shared, every whispered "I love you," turned to bitter ash. I realized then that her secret affair was not hidden behind closed doors but broadcast by her own car. I had always believed our marriage was built on trust and shared dreams. For years, my wife and I had cultivated a life of quiet routine and mutual support. We planned weekend getaways, cooked meals together, and spent long evenings talking about our future. I trusted her with every part of my heart, never suspecting that the car parked in our driveway could one day betray us both. Yet, that night, as the rain tapped against the windows, a hidden truth emerged, one that would unravel the tapestry of our lives in ways I could never have imagined. It all began on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday. I had finished work earlier than usual, eager for the solace of home and a quiet dinner. As I walked through the front door, I noticed that my wife's car, a sleek sedan I'd always admired for its pristine condition, was still connected to our home's Bluetooth system. I thought little of it until a strange, half-heard conversation emanated from the speakers. At first, I assumed it was a background conversation, perhaps a news broadcast or a recorded message. But as the murmur grew clearer, I realized it was a live conversation, intimate and laced with affectionate tones, coming directly from the car's speakers. Curiosity, mixed with an inexplicable dread, urged me to move closer. I strained to listen, catching snippets of words that chilled me to the bone, phrases like "Don't you want more?" and "I can't wait to see you tonight." My mind raced. Who was she speaking to? The thought of another man threaded its way through my consciousness, twisting my stomach into knots. I stood rooted in the doorway, the soft hum of the rain intensifying the surreal nature of what I was hearing. My heart pounded, each beat echoing a growing certainty that the life I thought I knew was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. I retreated to the living room, hands trembling as I pulled out my phone to check the Bluetooth history. There, in the list of recent connections, were details I'd never expected. The name Liam appeared alongside timestamps that corresponded with the moments I had overheard the conversation. I scrolled through the log, each entry a damning confirmation that my wife had been in constant contact with someone else, someone who was not a part of our shared life. The realization was like a punch to the gut. It felt as though every lie, every whispered secret, was being broadcast for all to hear. Overwhelmed by a mix of heartbreak, disbelief, and a mounting rage, I sank onto the couch and stared blankly at the dark screen of my phone. My mind spun as I tried to reconcile the loving partner I thought I knew with the reality that was unfolding before me. I began to replay the connection log over and over, each repetition amplifying the truth I had long feared. My wife was living a double life, and I was the last person to know. Every name, every timestamp, etched itself into my memory with the precision of a scalpel, slicing through the fabric of trust that had once held us together. I spent hours in a daze, questioning every moment from our past, those subtle hints, the late-night texts she dismissed as nothing important, the fleeting glances she cast at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. They all converged into one undeniable fact: she was cheating on me, and the evidence had been streaming directly from her car's Bluetooth. The betrayal was not hidden in dark corners or whispered behind closed doors. It was laid bare for me to hear, a digital confession that shattered the veneer of our marriage. Unable to bear the weight of the discovery, I gathered my thoughts and began documenting everything in a journal. I scribbled down the exact time the conversation had played, the words I had overheard, and every detail from the Bluetooth log. The pain in my chest was almost physical, a burning, searing ache that threatened to consume me. Yet, amid that storm of emotions, a spark of clarity emerged. I realized that while the truth hurt more than I ever imagined, it was also the only path toward reclaiming my life. In that raw, heart-wrenching moment, I vowed that I would no longer be a passive bystander in my own life. I would confront this betrayal head-on, gather every piece of evidence, and demand the truth from the woman I had once loved unconditionally. The Bluetooth log, those damning snippets of conversation, had forced me to see that our life together was built on lies, and it was time to face that reality. I made a silent promise to myself: I would not let this deception define me. I would use this painful truth as the catalyst for a new beginning, a future where trust was earned, where honesty reigned, and where I would finally reclaim my dignity. That night, as the rain continued to fall like a relentless symphony of regret against the window, I knew that my world had irrevocably changed. I was alone with the raw evidence of a betrayal that had left me shattered, yet within that shattering, I sensed the first stirrings of a fierce resolve. My journey from heartbreak to healing had begun, and with every heartbeat, I prepared myself to take the next step, a step that would lead to a confrontation, a reckoning, and ultimately, the birth of a new life defined by the unyielding power of truth. In the days that followed that shattering discovery, my life became a swirling vortex of raw emotion and relentless determination. Every minute was steeped in disbelief and anger, a tempest of thoughts that I could neither quiet nor ignore. I found myself pacing the empty corridors of our home, where the walls that had once echoed with laughter now whispered secrets of deceit. I couldn't shake the overwhelming truth. Her car's Bluetooth had exposed a hidden world, a secret conversation of intimacy and betrayal that I was never meant to hear. Every new detail that emerged from that digital confession fanned the flames of my despair, and yet, amid the storm, I began to craft a plan of retribution. For the first few days, I locked myself in our study, a room that had once been our shared haven for quiet conversation and reflection, but now served as my personal war room. Under the solitary glow of a desk lamp, I spread out every piece of evidence like scattered puzzle pieces. There were logs of Bluetooth connections, timestamps marking the precise moments when secret voices spoke softly in my ear, and snippets of conversation that revealed not only flirtations but explicit plans for clandestine rendezvous. I printed out every digital record, saved screenshots of the conversation history, and painstakingly assembled them into a chronological dossier. Each detail was a shard of a once beautiful dream now turned jagged and sharp, a mosaic of lies I could no longer ignore. As I pored over the evidence, I couldn't help but replay the moment over and over in my mind, the eerie calm of the night, the sound of rain tapping against the window, and then that startling burst of audio from her car's Bluetooth, a secret dialogue that spilled out like a confession of guilt. It was as if the car itself had become a witness, transmitting every surreptitious word to me in real time. The voices were soft yet undeniably intimate, laced with terms of endearment that were not meant for my ears. My heart pounded in a rhythm of anguish and rage. I felt violated, as if every promise we had shared was a lie woven into the very fabric of our everyday life. In the midst of that turmoil, I turned to my journal, the one place where I had always believed I could be completely honest with myself. I began to write feverishly, documenting each detail of the discovery, the exact time the Bluetooth connection had activated, the ambient sounds that had accompanied the clandestine conversation, and the raw shock that had flooded over me as I realized the extent of her deception. I wrote, "I trusted you with my heart and our life, and now I see that trust was a carefully guarded illusion." Every line I scribbled down was punctuated by a bitter mix of sorrow and a rising determination. The words became both a catharsis and a battle plan, a promise to myself that I would not allow her betrayal to define my future. The evidence was not just a series of digital footprints, it was the manifestation of a secret life that had been hidden in plain sight. I began cross-referencing the timestamps with our shared calendar, realizing that the moments of supposed gym sessions or late work meetings were, in fact, moments when her phone connected to the car's Bluetooth near a secluded parking lot. I meticulously noted the geographic locations, matching them to known spots, a dimly lit hotel near the outskirts of town, a quiet corner of an upscale restaurant, a parking lot that often served as a discreet meeting place. Each match was a devastating blow, a confirmation that the intimate conversations weren't accidental but deliberate acts of betrayal. Even as I gathered the evidence, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions raged within me. I oscillated between the crushing weight of heartbreak and a fierce, almost feral anger that demanded justice. I found myself questioning not only her actions but my own naivety. How had I been so thoroughly deceived by someone I loved and trusted? Every small hint, the extra time she needed to get ready, the occasional secretive smile when checking her phone, now loomed large as a glaring indicator of a life I had been completely left out of. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, but it also galvanized me. I knew that the time had come to stop living in the shadows of her lies and to take back control of my life. Determined to act, I began to formulate a blueprint for confrontation. I spent long, sleepless nights rehearsing my words in front of the mirror. My voice, raw and trembling at first, slowly gained a steely edge as I practiced questions that burned with a mixture of sorrow and righteous indignation. When did you begin this secret life? Who is the man behind these whispered messages? Why did you hide our truth from me? I repeated these questions until they echoed in my mind like a battle cry. Every repetition bolstered my resolve, transforming my grief into a weapon. I knew that the coming confrontation would be the most painful moment of my life, but I also knew that it was the only way to force the truth into the light, and to reclaim the dignity I had lost. The thought of confronting her filled me with both dread and a grim sense of purpose. I envisioned the scene, my wife, caught off guard by my calm, measured tone, her eyes wide with shock as she realized that the secret she had guarded so desperately was now laid bare before me. I pictured the room growing heavy with silence, punctuated only by the sound of our racing hearts and the truth that no amount of denial could hide. That vision, as painful as it was, filled me with an unwavering determination. I would not allow her to continue living a double life while I suffered in silence. The evidence was irrefutable, and I was resolved to confront it head-on. To ensure that I was fully prepared, I reached out to my closest friend, Jonathan, a man whose steady support had always been my anchor in turbulent times. In a quiet corner of a nearly empty diner one rainy afternoon, I laid everything out for him. "I've seen it all, Jonathan," I confessed, voice choked with emotion. "The Bluetooth logs, the timestamps, the secret messages, they all point to a hidden affair, a life you never knew existed. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to face her, but I know that I can't let this continue." Jonathan listened silently, his eyes reflecting both empathy and a quiet fury. "You have every right to be angry," he said softly. "You trusted her with everything, and now it's time for you to reclaim your life. Confront her, demand the truth, and don't let anyone ever diminish your worth again." His words, spoken with quiet conviction, cut through the fog of my despair and lit a spark of hope, an assurance that I was not alone in this battle. Emboldened by our conversation, I returned home and continued to refine my plan. I organized the dossier of evidence into a neat folder, each page meticulously labeled with dates, times, and locations. I created a detailed timeline that traced her movements and matched them with the Bluetooth records, a roadmap of betrayal that left no room for doubt. Every receipt, every digital timestamp, was a brick in the wall of deception that I was determined to demolish. I spent hours poring over the information, the room filled only with the soft rustle of paper and the steady hum of my thoughts as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Despite the overwhelming anger and sadness, a new strength began to emerge within me. I realized that my pain, as excruciating as it was, could be transformed into a force for reclaiming my identity. I began to set small, deliberate goals, steps that would help me regain control over my life. I took long walks in the early mornings, allowing the crisp air to clear my mind and steady my resolve. I revisited old hobbies that once brought me joy, slowly rediscovering the parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of betrayal. Every moment of self-care, every step toward healing, was a quiet rebellion against the deception that had once defined my world. As I continued to prepare, the day of confrontation loomed ever closer. I drafted a message on my phone, a terse, unambiguous request for a meeting that would force her to face the truth. "We need to talk," the message read. "I have evidence, and I deserve answers." I hesitated only for a moment before sending it, knowing that this step would irreversibly change everything. The waiting was excruciating, every minute stretched into an eternity as I sat alone, surrounded by the tangible proof of my wife's hidden life. In the dark of one particularly stormy night, as thunder rumbled in the distance and rain battered the windows, I found myself alone with my thoughts in the study. I reviewed the dossier one final time, letting the weight of each piece of evidence sink into my heart. The messages, the timestamps, the meticulously organized timeline, each was a declaration of the betrayal that had fractured our shared life. And yet, as I sat there, I felt a sense of resolve hardening within me. I knew that the truth, no matter how painful, was a gift, a brutal, unyielding gift that would free me from the shackles of deception. I vowed that I would confront her with every detail, demand the answers that I so desperately deserved, and in doing so, reclaim the future that had been stolen from me. Every step of my preparation was infused with the raw determination to transform my pain into power. I was no longer the man who had blindly trusted without question. I had become a man awakened by betrayal, fueled by a need to see justice done, not only for myself but for the sanctity of the truth. I understood that the confrontation would be the most difficult moment of my life, yet it was also the moment that would set me free. I was ready to expose the hidden life she had built, a life that had betrayed every promise, every dream, every hope we had ever shared. As the days turned into a final, tense countdown to the confrontation, my inner world settled into a steely resolve. I knew that I could not allow her secret to continue to cast its long shadow over my life. I would bring the truth into the light, regardless of the cost, and I would let that truth shape a future defined by honesty and self-respect. With the dossier securely compiled and every question etched into my mind, I stood on the precipice of the ultimate reckoning, a moment that would forever alter the course of my life. I woke at dawn that day with the weight of every secret and every betrayal heavy on my chest, a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the promise of yesterday. In that first, captivating 100 words, every heartbeat told me that nothing would ever be the same. My wife's clandestine affair, exposed by the indiscriminate truth of her car's Bluetooth, had dismantled the fragile trust I'd built over years. The evidence was irrefutable, the reality cruel, and as I sat there with the remnants of our shattered life echoing around me, I knew that the final reckoning was at hand, a moment when the lies would no longer have power, and from the ruins of our shared dreams, I would forge a future defined solely by truth and self-respect. The confrontation had been a storm of raw emotion. I had gathered every digital trace, timestamps, screenshots, and voice snippets from the Bluetooth logs, and laid them out meticulously in my study. Each piece was a shard of the life I thought I shared, and every detail burned into my memory with unyielding clarity. When I finally approached my wife that fateful evening, the house was eerily quiet, the ambient hum of our once joyful home now replaced by the oppressive silence of impending truth. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, the momentary flash of guilt as she realized I was no longer the oblivious partner who trusted blindly. "Why?" I demanded, my voice trembling not with weakness, but with a storm of heartbreak and righteous fury. I recounted every message, every clandestine conversation that had leaked through the speakers of her car, a secret symphony of infidelity. Her face paled. The words she offered were mere whispers, feeble excuses that crumbled under the weight of the evidence. I watched, feeling each second stretch into an eternity as I forced her to confront the reality that she had so carefully hidden. The conversation was brutal. Every word she uttered was an admission of deceit, and with every tear that fell, the tapestry of our shared life unraveled further. I pressed on, my questions sharp and unyielding. "How long did this go on? Who is this Alex you keep talking about?" Her responses were mumbled and evasive, but the truth had already been laid bare in the cold glow of my dossier. In that charged moment, the hurt transformed into a grim determination. I realized that I could no longer be defined by the betrayal that had stained our past. Instead, I would harness the pain to reclaim my identity, a rebirth forged in the fires of deception. In the days that followed, the aftermath of that confrontation was both a crucible and a catalyst for transformation. I moved out of the home we had once dreamed of sharing, leaving behind the echoes of laughter that now felt like ghostly reminders of what was lost. I began the arduous process of untangling our shared finances and legal commitments, each step a symbolic severance from the life that had been built on lies. Every document signed and every asset divided was not merely a legal formality, it was a declaration that I was reclaiming my future. The process was painstaking, filled with moments of anger and sorrow, yet it also brought a sense of liberation I hadn't dared to imagine. At the same time, I sought solace in the quiet rituals that had once brought me peace. I took long, solitary walks in the early hours of the morning, the crisp air and rhythmic cadence of my footsteps gradually quieting the tumult within. I returned to old passions. Writing, which had always been my sanctuary, became the channel through which I poured out every raw emotion. In my journal, I recounted every detail of the betrayal, every sleepless night haunted by the whispers of that Bluetooth revelation, and slowly, I began to understand that my pain was not a sign of weakness but a testament to my resilience. I realized that while the scars would never fully fade, they were now the roadmap of a journey toward self-discovery and rebirth. My blog, which I had started as a private outlet, soon blossomed into a vibrant community of voices, others who had faced similar betrayals, who had been forced to rebuild their lives from the wreckage of broken trust. Their stories, raw and unfiltered, intertwined with mine, creating a tapestry of shared strength and the unyielding human spirit. The outpouring of support was both cathartic and empowering. It affirmed that I was not alone, and that by exposing the painful truth, I could not only reclaim my dignity but also inspire others to do the same. Every comment, every message of solidarity, was a beacon of hope, guiding me through the darkest corridors of despair. I began to see that my path to healing was not linear, it was a winding journey marked by setbacks and small victories. I immersed myself in therapy with a counselor who specialized in relationship trauma. In our sessions, I learned to channel the searing anger into creative energy and to transform the grief into a force that propelled me forward. "The pain you feel is the price of truth," my therapist said one afternoon, her voice gentle yet firm. "It may never completely vanish, but it will always remind you of your strength and your capacity to rebuild." Those words became a mantra, echoing in my mind as I navigated the labyrinth of legal proceedings and personal healing. With the divorce finalized and the legal battles drawing to a close, I turned my focus to rebuilding a life that was unmistakably my own. I moved into a modest apartment that I could call my sanctuary, a place where every wall, every corner, would bear witness not to the lies of the past but to the promise of a fresh start. I redecorated the space with colors that reflected the hope and resilience I was beginning to feel, a calming blue, a warm amber, hues that spoke of new beginnings. Every object, every photograph I hung, was chosen with care, a deliberate act of reclaiming my identity and rewriting my story. I also sought new challenges in my career. I embraced projects that stretched my creativity, that allowed me to prove to myself and to the world that I was more than the sum of my heartbreak. I began to network with people who shared my passion for honesty and authenticity, forging relationships that were built on mutual respect and the promise of new possibilities. Each professional triumph, however small, became a brick in the foundation of the new life I was constructing. I learned to let the lingering pain fuel my ambition, turning every setback into a stepping stone toward personal and professional growth. Yet, even as I rebuilt my world, there were moments when the memories of that fateful night would surge back with relentless intensity. In the quiet hours before dawn, as I sat alone with a cup of coffee, I would replay the sound of that secret conversation emanating from her car's Bluetooth, each word a reminder of the trust that had been so callously broken. Those moments, though painful, became the impetus for my transformation. I realized that I had a choice, to let the betrayal define me, or to use it as the catalyst for a rebirth that would empower me to reclaim every bit of my self-worth. I chose the latter. In time, I began to share my journey more openly. I continued to blog, now with the voice of a man who had been scarred but not defeated. I wrote about the painstaking process of healing, the bitter lessons learned, and the newfound strength that arose from confronting the darkest truths. My writing was raw and cathartic, resonating with readers who saw in my story a reflection of their own struggles. The act of sharing, of baring my soul to the world, became both an act of defiance and a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the city in a blaze of orange and gold, I found myself standing on the balcony of my new apartment, gazing out at a horizon filled with endless possibilities. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of liberation, a deep, abiding peace that came from knowing that I was no longer defined by the betrayal that had once threatened to consume me. I had transformed my pain into a force for change, and I was determined to move forward with my head held high, my heart open to the possibility of genuine love and connection in the future. The journey from that devastating discovery to this new dawn was not easy. It was marked by long nights of tears, bitter words, and a relentless quest for truth and justice. But in every painful step, I found a lesson, a reminder that even the deepest wounds can serve as the foundation for a rebirth. I learned that true healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from embracing it, from letting the scars remind you of the battles you've fought and the strength you've gained in the process. Now, as I look back on the ruins of the life we once built together, a life that was tainted by deceit, I see it as a turning point, a moment of clarity that allowed me to reclaim my destiny. I stand as a man reborn, a man who has taken the shards of his broken trust and forged them into a new future built on truth, resilience, and unwavering self-respect. My heart, though still carrying the echoes of betrayal, beats with a renewed purpose, a promise that no matter how many times I may be hurt, I will always rise, rebuild, and embrace the light of a new dawn. In the end, I understand that the pain of betrayal, as unbearable as it may seem, is also a powerful catalyst for transformation. It strips away the false veneers we cling to and forces us to confront our true selves. And in that confrontation, we discover the strength to let go, to heal, and to create a future that is authentically our own. My journey is far from over, but with every sunrise, I move further away from the shadows of my past and closer to a life defined by the relentless power of truth and the enduring promise of hope.